Hey everyone, it's Karina, educator with Kenra Professional, and today I cannot wait to share with you guys how I created this beautiful Sunkissed Brunette color on my model today. We started off with an all over level 4, completely blank canvas. So just really can't wait to show you guys the technique as well as the tones we use to create this. It's a really good color and overall look for those clients that they're brunette, maybe they want to add a little bit of dimension without being too blonde. This is going to be the perfect look here, so stick around so you can see how we created it. To begin my Sunkissed Brunette color application, I have pre-sectioned my model's hair into 9 sections. So I'm gonna spin her around and give you guys a little gander on what we did here. So we are going to be very strategically placing her dimension. She is a very solid canvas, which is why I'm going in with such a more controlled sectioning to begin the application. So we have pretty much 2 in the nape, 2 in the middle portion of the back of her head here, and then 1 in the crown. And then we have 1 on the lower right side, 1 on the upper right side, and then we also have the same thing mimicking here on the left side. Again, really just gonna allow for ultimate control as we add some really beautiful sun-kissed dimension into her hair. So we're gonna go ahead and start this application in the back sections. Reason being, it typically tends to be a lot deeper and darker in the nape area, so that's where I want to begin my application. I'm going to start on the left side, but you will notice that I'm standing on the right side to do this application. Reason being is I'm going to be taking diagonal forward subsections because my model here, you guys can see she has naturally curly hair. Wavy, deep wave to curly hair. So the way I'm gonna go in and place her dimension today is going to be in a diagonal forward subsection. This is gonna give her the blend that we love when her hair is a little bit smoother, but then when she decides to wear her hair curly, it's gonna give us boldness in that state as well. So diagonal forward, and for the bottom 2 sections, I'm going to be doing a more standard weave. And typically when I approach an application like this, I don't really like to start off with applying highlight directly to her hairline here. This is gonna be more of a lived-in sun-kissed look, so I definitely don't feel the need to highlight right on the hairline. She does have finer hair, so I also want to really preserve the integrity of her hair around the hairline here. So I have my first diagonal forward section, and I'm going to slightly back comb to give my highlight some diffusion. With her hair, it is a little fuller towards the root, so I'm gonna start that back comb a little bit higher up. We wanna make sure that our ends have friends when we highlight. So I'll show you guys if we were to take a more traditional approach to back combing, which typically can be from the ends, you'll see that as we do that, we'll have very little hair to highlight here. So I'm trying to prevent us from having potential highlights that diffuse out because there's not enough hair, not enough density. So because her hair is fuller towards the root, I definitely am going to do a slight back comb higher up to maintain density throughout the entire subsection here. All right, so we're gonna go in and do a bit of a more standard stitch or weave here. I have about 5 pieces in my foil. And then for these ones in the nape area, because it's through the nape and more around the perimeter, I am going to apply my Creme lightener a bit higher up in my foil, because as her hair falls and comes forward, I do want to see that color from the front a bit higher. So I'm going to keep these ones a lot higher through the back. So to get a nice even lift and to prevent any banding through this application, her hair is pretty long, so I'm going to do a flat lay foil where I lay my foils on top after application instead of like doing a tri-fold. Because her hair is a little bit finer, we're doing more of like an inch in thickness in between her foils here. Because another thing to keep in mind also with her fine density and then her curl pattern. So as her hair shrinks up, if we do too much, it's gonna give the appearance of an all over color, and we don't want that. We do want some contrast, so we want to keep some of that depth there. So again, diagonal forward, and about midway down, I'm gonna back comb a little bit to get some diffusion and get a nice clean subsection. And I'm going in with between 4 and 5 stitches per, or weave patterns per foil here. So I love this cream lightener because it really allows the saturation levels to be pretty high here with very little effort. So I love how it saturates through the hair nicely. And then as we work up the head, we really just want to continue to maintain the diagonal forward sections here. So you'll notice as you work through each subsection, they'll vary from wide to narrow, but just continue to keep that same consistency throughout your subsection. So this will be my last one here. I'm gonna go ahead and complete the same steps and the same process in my right section here, and then we'll work in the upper back sections in just a second. Okay, so now we're gonna be jumping into our middle sections here. The really important thing to remember when we want to create these sun-kissed dimensional looks that are a bit more balayage looking is the height of our lightener and how high and the different heights that we want our highlights to live at. So I went really up closer to the root for these bottom ones because we want to really accentuate the length through the bottom here. But in the interior, I don't necessarily want that same approach with these two sections because this is really where we're gonna see a lot more contrast, and although we do wanna add dimension, we might not wanna keep it as high up because I don't want her to have like an all over highlighted look. So with these sections here, I am going to still take the same diagonal forward foil lines and sectioning. However, we're going to do a couple of things a little bit different to help give more of a melted dimension through the interior parts of the hair because I really want to preserve some brunette in the interior. So I'm going to take my diagonal forward subsection, and then we're going to do the same steps as far as back combing, so not too much because of her hair's density. And then what we're gonna do through the interior, because it's a bit more, it's probably the most dense in this area, I'm going to use a couple of different formulas, and I'm going to keep this a slice because I do want to get more of a heavier ribbon through the interior. So a couple points of difference here. We're not going to weave this. We're going to keep it more of a thin slice. And now I'm going to also alter my starting point of where I want my highlights to start. So I want them to not be this as high as my previous highlights. I want to shift that down a little bit lower. The other thing I'm doing is I'm going in with our high lift. We're gonna do the high lift ice with 30 volume to begin the highlights. So I'm gonna kind of go in a blended, still taking a really soft blended sweeping motion here to keep it soft. And then we're gonna melt this into our lightener. I love, love, love doing this because when I go in and root tap later, this is still gonna be nice and diffused and blended and melted, and we don't really have to worry about melting our root tap down that low if we didn't want to. Just overall gonna give a much cleaner, more controlled, like soft gradients. Instead of relying strictly on our root color to do that for us, we're gonna create it in our foundation work here. So really utilize that high lift color as an anchor to just support the contrast between the depth and the lightness that we have here on the ends. Definitely want to overlay your foils because we're working with two different formulas. We don't want those to clash. So I'm getting about 3 foils per section. Again, due to the density, so if your client had so much more hair, like really, really thick hair, then you would definitely find yourself placing more foils in. All right, so we're approaching our last section here. Wanted to just share a quick little tip about the back combing. As we're back combing the hair, we definitely want to do a slow and controlled approach here. I do sometimes tend to see, you know, the back combing get a little intense, but we definitely want to just do it nice and slow and controlled. I feel like you can get a much better tease and end result here by just being a bit more controlled and slow, so you can back comb the areas as needed, so you get a nice even subsection here. So last section in this area, starting off with my high lift color and then blending, melting in my lightener. With this type of lived-in, more balayage highlight look, I find it extremely fun, and then you can be really creative with the length at which you place your highlights throughout the entire application. So you can do some higher, some lower, but really just get creative on the actual application itself and how you place it throughout the entire head. Last section here, you'll notice it is a little bit more over directed, so it's going to give us a little bit more of that depth and length through the root area. So as it falls forward, she's going to have nice pops of lighter pieces, versus if we went in horizontally, right, we'd have these heavier sheets of blonde. So I want to keep it as close to like a sun-kissed dimensional look as possible. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and complete the same steps and the same process in the other section, and then we'll work through the top. So we've made our way to the crown section here. And in this section, I'm gonna go ahead and go in with horizontal subsections. Reason being is this area acts as like a veil over the top of everything else. So I do want a bit of glisteny dimension up a little bit higher here. So we're gonna go in with horizontal subsections. I'll get about 2 foils in this particular area of the head, and they are a bit wider, so you can absolutely use a wider foil here if you want, or you can break your section into 2. I like to lay out this section and spread it out just to see the amount of hair and like the surface and coverage I'll potentially get. So once I get a better gauge with my eyes what I'm gonna color, we're gonna go ahead and skim off the top of that subsection. And then from here, I'm going to go in with my back combing a little bit farther down, because in this particular section, I do want a lot more diffusion. I don't want as heavy as a contrast. I would prefer a bit more of like that baby light effect. So what I'm gonna do is start a little bit lower and really just work my back combing in, so I can get a really good gauge on how much hair I'm actually going to be coloring here. So you can see with just that alone, if I wanted to go in a little bit bolder and stronger, I could use this diffusion alone to create similar to like a little baby light effect. But I'm gonna go in and actually do some weaving because I want it to be very blended. So you guys can see how much the hair tends to, it's gonna really expand and spread out because of where we're placing this on the head. So that's why I definitely wanted to go in with more of a horizontal placement. It's gonna naturally spread throughout the round of the crown here. So again, just really going in slow and controlled to get a nice back comb in my top here, and then going in with my weave. So we have some really nice fine weaves there, but that also still look very, very organic. So as this processes and becomes a little lighter, it's gonna spread throughout the surface of the top of the hair here and veil over a lot of that depth in the interior that we place beneath it. It's gonna look really pretty. So that's going to complete our entire back. So we've got most of our application, our highlight application done here. So because I started on this side, I'm gonna continue to work around. So we meet at the end here for timing purposes. We want it to all process the same. So for this front section here, we are going to still be taking our diagonal forward. So we're gonna continue diagonal forward, diagonal forward, diagonal forward throughout the remaining parts of her front sections, because this is more like the perimeter and hairline, so I definitely want to see that color a bit higher up. So we're going to take our diagonal forward subsection, back comb, do our weave, and keep that lightener placement a bit higher as we work through our remaining front sections here. All right, so we have completed our entire full head foil. Super excited for that. I went in to recap, I went in with cream lightener and 10 volume throughout the entire head. And then after I was done with my foil application, I went through each section and pretty much gathered all of the hair that was left out because I am gonna do a permanent on her color in between. Reason being is I really want her to have a very natural sun-kissed look. And as we know, when the hair is a bit more naturally sun-kissed, it kind of goes from like our natural color and fades into this really rich, warm tone. So I'm gonna go in, and because I pretty much gathered each section of my in-between hair, it makes it really quick and really simple to do a color in between such a heavy foil application. I'm going to be using 6G and 30 volume to help me generate a lot of warmth here and also a little bit of lift. And I'm only gonna apply it from her ends in through her mids. So it's gonna give us a nice anchor to really blend the contrast from her roots to her highlight color into her ends in between. I do like the color that's here, but as you guys can see, it's not as warm. So it has a little light warmth to it, but I really want to go in and enhance that. So I'm going to take that 6G and 30 vol. Reason why I use 30 vol is because there is absolutely no heat through the mids and ends, and I definitely want to generate a natural looking warmth here. So 30 vol is going to be the perfect option to give me a much more controlled 2 levels of lift. So I'm gonna apply it really heavy through the ends and use my fingers as the tool to melt upward. So as I am applying, I'm applying 6G with 30 vol, and I'm really, really heavily saturating through the end. You can see I have a nice level of saturation, and I'm working it up towards the root to create a nice soft blend. I don't want any hard lines of demarcation. And considering that we are working with a permanent, definitely want to utilize my fingers and my hands as a blending tool, basically to blend upward toward the root to create a nice soft transition into the warmth. So we will see a couple levels of a lift here, but a lot more warmth that we're going to bring through by applying this permanent shade in between her foils. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this exact application. I have about 4 sections of her hair that I gathered throughout, and pretty much repeat that heavy saturation through the ends, melting it and blending it upwards with my fingers. A good tip and rule of thumb is where you kind of start your back comb is where I'm gonna feather up to. So we'll have a nice transition and blend throughout the entire head. Okay, so we made our way through our color application. Just to do a little recap, we did full head highlight. I went ahead and applied my 6G permanent with 30 volume in between her foils. We're gonna go ahead and let her process for about another 20-25 minutes, and then we'll bring her back so you can see her hair before our toning application. So see you soon. Okay, so we went ahead and processed for about 25 minutes. I shampooed my model's hair with triple repair twice to get the color, the lightener out of her hair. So now we're gonna go in with our toning process. So for this, you guys can kind of see there's a nice blended gradient to her highlight application already, just based on how we placed it with those diagonal forwards. So I'm super excited. We're gonna go in and I'm literally gonna just do a root tap throughout the entire application using 5NB with our Demi-Permanent. I'm going to start the application in a 2-section application. So what I like to do is go in and truly tap the root color on. I'm not too concerned yet with blending out any foil lines. The main purpose of my root tap in this application is to add depth to her natural color, because she's a level 4, but she does have a bit of like a warmth to her hair. So I wanna drop it down and make it richer so it just has a bit more of a shaded effect. But I don't wanna, I'm not using anything too cool because I do wanna keep it rich at the same time. So 5MB is gonna be a perfect shade for that. So once I go in and do her tap from the front hairline back into the nape here, now I'm going to go in and in the same way that I applied the foils, which was in a diagonal forward way, you guys can see right there very perfectly that's how I'm gonna go in and apply my root tap to her hair as well. So it's going to help with that blend. And then as I go through, you can definitely use your finger to help bring the color down and marry it into the foil work that we did. And I do also want to point out, if you guys remember through this interior bit, we did that high lift, melted it into the lightener. So I do want to show you what that looks like when the hair is wet. You can see that we were able to create a blend with just our product. So you guys can see how it goes from dark, blends into a mid-tone, and then drops out into that bright blonde. So as I'm doing her root tap here, I really don't have those foil lines that I have to worry about in this scenario, because I utilize that high lift to help be my blender through more of that tip out effect through the interior of the hair. So just kind of wanted to point out why I applied the highlights the way I did in that interior. Once I start working through the sides here, we're gonna make sure we maintain that diagonal forward all the way through instead of the diagonal back. Go ahead and outline your sections to help with the control. So as I'm working through my application, I'm able to maintain, I am standing in front of her so I can maintain my diagonal forward sectioning. And this is really gonna allow me to just see all of the dimension that we put in and just really mirror that. I'm gonna go back through with my brush and just lightly, don't want to comb the product necessarily through her ends, but really just help so that I can use my fingers to blend the product downward. So that way when we go in with her mids and ends glaze, it's nice and combed out for us so we get a nice saturation. I'm just really gonna work that in with my fingers. All right, so I'm gonna continue this process on the other side of the head, and then we'll come back as I do her all over glaze. All right, so I went ahead and applied her all over glaze and tone. I went ahead and used 8GB with a splash of 7NB to really polish off and refine this beautiful blonde that we lifted to. So we're gonna go ahead and let this process between 15 and 25 minutes, depending how her hair takes to it and the oxidation process. So we're gonna go ahead and let this process, and we will be back to show you the final result once she's all dried and styled. And this is the final look of our Sunkissed Brunette. I hope you guys love the way it came out as much as I love sharing all of my tips and tricks with you. So please don't forget to subscribe to Kenra Professional, and we'll see you on the next one.